Papa Legba is a deity of West African voodoo, Haitian Vodou, and New Orleans voodoo. He is considered the spirit of the crossroads because he facilitates communication and connection between humans and the Loa, the spirits who rule over different aspects of everyday life. It is believed that to have a prayer or petition reach the spirit realm, it must pass through Papa Legba first. This god can communicate in all languages and is often portrayed as an old, feeble man carrying a cane and walking among dogs, a sacred animal to him. His vive, a geometrical drawing meant to represent him as a spirit, includes the cane, several keys, and the colors red and black. The majority of individuals who work with Legba are initiated into one of the many African diasporic traditional religions, such as Santeria, Haitian Vodou, or New Orleans Voodoo. There are very specific methods to get in touch with Legba, many of which are customs involving the initiating party that need to be observed. By working under the tutelage of a Haungan or Mambo, a devotee participates in ceremonies and rituals to form a relationship with Legba and the Aloha. Through personal devotion, devoted altars, and suitable offerings to the spirits, some practitioners of hoodoo and other African traditional religions cultivate these connections. "20 years later, the official story of Hurricane Katrina still leaves out what really happened in the first 48 hours. Share this before history gets rewritten again. When the storm hit on August 29, 2005, the wind was brutal. But that's not what drowned New Orleans. By mid-morning, the levees failed. Entire neighborhoods were swallowed in minutes. Phones were dead. Radios silent. Families climbed onto rooftops with nothing but what they could grab. Some waited for rescue boats that never came. In the lower 9th Ward, water rose so fast that elders were trapped in attics. People broke through roofs with hammers, praying someone would see them. Meanwhile, the Superdome, meant to be a refuge, became a nightmare. Food ran out, the heat was suffocating, and medical help never arrived for the sick and elderly. In some parishes, volunteer rescuers were stopped by armed officials who claimed it was too dangerous, while people were dying just blocks away. The first 48 hours of Katrina weren't just about a storm. They were about systems failing the people who needed them most. If you lived through it, or know someone who did, tell your story below, because the truth only survives if we share it. If you think slavery ended in Louisiana in 1865, you need to hear this. Follow now, so you don't forget the truth they keep off the tours. Once, Angola was a massive plantation along the Mississippi River, run on the backs of enslaved people. After the Civil War, you'd think the land would be freed, but in the late 1800s it was sold to the state and turned into a prison. Here's the part they don't tell you. Many of the men sent to Angola were black, arrested under Jim Crow vagrancy laws designed to replace slavery with prison labor. They worked the same fields their enslaved grandparents once did, planting, picking, and cutting sugarcane under the same punishing sun. The guards? Often the same white overseer families who'd run the plantation. The tools, the land, the cruelty barely changed. Today, Angola is still one of the largest maximum security prisons in the U.S., with over 5,000 inmates. The fields are still worked, and the shadow of that plantation is still there. When tourists pass Angola, they see fences and guard towers. But if you look deeper, you're staring at a living relic of slavery's afterlife. Comment if you've heard this before, and follow for more truths they never put in your history books.
Did you forget about your granddaddy, your great-granddaddy? Let me tell you, can I tell y'all something? When I was a kid, there was something that we would call throwing. Now, early in the morning, we get out to the cotton field. You know, some people had to get out there. Arthritis was still bothering them. And with that arthritis, early in the morning, there's dew on the ground. And if anybody have arthritis, they know when they get ready to rain how you hurt. Some people put salt in their hand, but they know they had to be in the cotton field. I'm going to share how they made it work. Years before then, now I've heard them do this too, but not that often. They would say, swing low, sweet chariot, come and take us home, right? That was one of the songs, okay? But me, even as a kid, now here it is, I'm just a little shorty. Now you had probably Miss Clementine, Mr. Roosevelt, Miss May. You had some of the elders out there, and they in that field, and they've been over and they're picking that cotton. Now, when you first start picking that cotton, the tip of your fingers, the cuticle start, you know, because you're sticking your finger inside the boat and it pricks it, and it started to after a while, and it hurts. Well, to cover all of that, to mask all of that, is to throw that out the window. I would hear probably Mr. Big Six. Everybody bending over now, picking cotton. Mr. Big Six would say something like, don't you know I be standing? Miss Clementine, she way over across the field. She would pick it up. She would say, I be standing all around God's station. That's Miss Clementine. Then you got Mr. Ralph Pot over there. Mr. Ralph Pot, he'll say, I be holding my ticket. Before he could finish that, then you got Mr. James Collins. My ticket all in my hand. When we get through, now when they start doing that, because that's my cue, you know, that, and you know what? Those people that was bent over picking that cotton was in that so much pain. In 30 minutes, that whole cotton field had the Spirit of God. That's what kept us. That's what kept us. Don't forget great-granddaddy, what they went through. Great-grandmama, what she went through. Now, if any men or any women listen to this, I thank God for all the content creators. I really do. I thank God for my page. Because I've had so many people come on my page and lift my spirit up when I was down, and y'all didn't even know it. How many people you've helped? You're doing the same thing that your great-granddaddy did. You lift up somebody's spirit. I love you.
Greetings and salutations, divine, all blessed. Greetings and salutations, honor and respect, honor and respect, honor and respect. It is another edition of Revolutionary Hoodoo, New Orleans Voodoo Secrets and Recipes. Voodoo Hoodoo 101. Powered, supported, and brought to you by NOIVD, New Orleans International Voodoo Day. New Orleans International Voodoo Day serves as a beacon for voodoo practitioners, artists, enthusiasts, connecting us to our ancestors, our heritage, and to each other. And through our collective efforts, we aim to revitalize and promote voodoo and voodoo traditions in New Orleans and beyond, create a vibrant, inclusive, and supportive community, and inspire personal transformation, creativity, and social change, to honor the past, embrace the present, and manifest a brighter future. The power and wisdom of Voodoo can create and contribute to a world that is more just, more passionate, and enchanting, where Voodoo and African diasporic spiritual traditions are valued and integrated into society, promoting spiritual growth, cultural understanding, community empowerment, artistic expression, healing, and social justice. And we continue to invite you to visit us for updates and more information about New Orleans International Voodoo Day, as well as our practitioners and sponsors and community, and the many diverse events, celebrations, protests, grassroots activities that we conduct and are a party to each and every day of our year. We invite you to visit us at www.voodooday.org. Again, www.voodooday.org. NOIVD.org for our mission statement, our membership board, our committees, our events, and much more upcoming information about our third annual International New Orleans Voodoo Day. Much like the city it calls home, the history of New Orleans voodoo is fascinating. Voodoo has been ingrained in Louisiana culture for over 300 years. And indeed, New Orleans is older than the United States of America. Don't let Hollywood depictions fool you. Voodoo doesn't involve sorcerers, potions, dark magic, or a doll being poked with a sewing needle. Voodoo is an authentic religion, still practiced today around the world, and it's much more complex than you might think. Let's take a brief deep dive into what New Orleans voodoo is and explore key historical moments that shaped it into what it is today. Voodoo represents the union of West African Vodou religion and Roman Catholicism. The religion encompasses the beliefs of the descendants of enslaved Dahomey, Congo, Yoruba, Akan, and other ethnic groups. The practice of voodoo began in Louisiana from the arrival of the first slave ship from the Bight of Benin in West Africa to the so-called New World, and was only, in some would say, reinvigorated, others would say, brought out into the daylight and presented with a greater sense of challenge during the Saint Dominique colony and eventually spreading to New Orleans by way of the Haitian Revolution. Voodoo is also known to be spelled Voodoo. Here in Louisiana, voodoo, Voudou, or Voudon, or Vaudo, all meaning spirit or deity, and everything is spirit. It is the fundamental basis of voodoo and, quite frankly, of animistic traditions throughout the world. The religion encompasses several values, including philosophy, medicine, justice, and certainly religion. The religion worships one superior creator. Practitioners consider this creator too remote to reach directly. So we access intermediary spirits called Loa or Orisha or Abasan, depending on the ethnic language and dialect being utilized. Loa act as mediums between the physical realm and the spiritual realm. Voodoo found a new home, or a reinvigorated home, I should say, with the Haitian arrival post-revolutionary, post the revolutionary uprising and conquering of Haiti, that practiced the religion and then arrived here in New Orleans in the early 1700s. And voodoo remained the same with little interruptions for over 100 years, although it traveled across an ocean. Present day Congo Square, located just blocks from my door, located in New Orleans' historic Armstrong Park, was a prominent voodoo gathering place for enslaved and free people of color. And Congo Square was a place of worship and gathering for enslaved and free people of color on Sunday afternoons. They would go to the square to dance, play music, and catch up with friends and family, begin vending and trading and selling of herbs, roots, plants, delicacies that were often grown and then created and produced to sell to the greater community. Uh, Little is understood and known about the enslaved populace not being fed on Sundays because they didn't work on Sundays. So we were also allowed to have little plots of plants, vegetables, herbs, fruit trees, etc. in Congo Square, and is credited with the development of the praline lady, the watermelon man, and vending as we have come to understand it and know it throughout the South and certainly throughout Black America. Visiting Congo Square created a sense of community during the 1700s for the enslaved people. It wasn't until the early 1800s that the religion took on a new version of itself. A mixing of traditions took place during the transfer of West African customs to Santo Domingue and to New Orleans. As more slaves from Santo Domingue arrived in New Orleans, free people of color arrived in New Orleans. Voodoo developed a stronger presence in this Catholic colony, and the presence of one creator and Loa becoming synonymous with Catholic saints further cemented Catholicism's influence on voodoo here, but also throughout the so-called South America, Central America, the New World. Voodoo became known as voodoo with four O's in the United States, and this misspelling embraced by practitioners in Louisiana specifically. One of voodoo's most well-known practitioners we all have come to know, Marie Laveau, Louisiana's voodoo queen, original voodoo queen. Laveau, a devout Catholic, practiced Catholicism and voodoo simultaneously. She rose to prominence by feeding the hungry, counseling high-ranking businessmen, and nursing the sick back to health through great plagues in the New Orleans area. In the mid to late 1900s, movies, television, and books called voodoo to become pop cultural phenomenon, albeit misunderstood. Today, New Orleans voodoo is the subject of numerous New Orleans tourist attractions, movies, TV shows, music festivals, beer, potato chips, restaurants, convenience stores, and so much more. And you can also experience various voodoo practices and significant sites in New Orleans through guided voodoo tours. As such, is offered by Our Sacred Stories and Sister Storyteller, Denise Augustine. And while it's less common in New Orleans than it was in the 17, 1800s, the New Orleans voodoo religion remains in practice by residents across the Crescent City. And it's now been elevated and amalgamated with authentic Haitian and West African demonstrations of not just voodoo as we know it, but other ethnocultural practices and traditions among the Aboriginal, indigenous West African populace, as well as that which became intermixed here in the New World. The Voodoo Spiritual Temple and our beloved Priestess Miriam, once located directly across from Congo Square, now it's a few blocks further up Rampart Street, serves as a place where people can go for voodoo consultations, rituals, lectures, and the like. And certainly, you can visit myself, House of the Divine Prince, Hoodoo Central LLC, by sending me an email to Divine Prince at houseofthedivine.prince.com or the Divine Prince at gmail.com. And you can also contact Elder Reggie, known here on this platform as Green Soap, Shrine of the White Cloth, and so many more practitioners within our International New Orleans Voodoo Day family. Voodoo is cemented as a pillar in Louisiana culture due to its historical significance and its commercialization and entertainment value. New Orleans will continue to be the epicenter of this religion with origins as far back as ancient Africa and quite possibly beyond. We are certainly appreciative of those of you who continue to join us here at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, weeknights for this gathering, this shared sacred space of voodoo, hoodoo, root work, conjurer, spiritual practitioners from the Pan African diaspora. And we certainly invite you and those of you out there listening to bring your knowledge, bring your practice, bring your experience to this space, and please collaborate and co-host with us the beloved sister Toni Val Martinez had a meeting in the Crossroads, and she will not be with us tonight. She's doing a tango with Ogu right about now. But we certainly are grateful for our live chat participants. Greetings and salutations. Britt Brat Dash, thank you for being present with us and your consistent attendance and support. Greetings, our community member and our New Orleans Healing Center community member, Daniel Neal. We certainly appreciate you for your continued participation and support. Luteria Daniels, thank you so much for continuing to come and participate. Lydia Morton, greetings and salutations once again to you and yours. Ray Alexander, we certainly greet you with all divine health and wellness and appreciate your continued attendance and support. And we are unmuting our beloved Elder Reggie, the White Cloth, Green Soap, and then our beloved brother, First Priest, Wildman, Joshua Nylan Tanner, Black Hawk, Voodoo. All is indeed a blessing. Come on in, Elder Reggie.
Yes, thank you, Divine. Thank you, Divine Prince. And welcome, Brother Josh, and our family in the chat room. But I'd like to start off again. I know we're talking about voodoo, but Divine Prince, I just want to just give you a big thanks and shout out for the whole process of the unveiling, and Brother Joshua also for supporting that event, getting in front of the mic, being seen, not being in the shadow of anything. Because with voodoo, so many people want to stay in the shadow, and I know that's a safe zone, but sometimes we got to come out the shadow and be seen. Especially if we standing for voodoo, sometimes we got to be seen and we got to be heard to let people know we're not just tourists all the time. We're here doing real work, doing real things for real people. And with that said, I want to say thanks again. And I really, really appreciated everything. But the second half to this is for all in the listening audience and who may be local, we're going to have some voodoo on display from a prayer perspective on August 23rd. It's a collective practitioner prayer. Come as you are. If you witchy, you voodoo, you Ifa, you Ordinali, you Christian, you Muslim, whatever. Come as you are. Come in this collective prayer and help us raise the vibration of this country in the city of New Orleans and turn some things around. With that, I'd like to pass it on to Brother Joshua.
Good day, everyone. Hope you guys having a good day. Everybody in the chat and listening audience, and Elder Reggie, and Divine Prince. And to reiterate what Brother Elder Reggie just said. Yeah, that I'm honored to have been to be there and to be a part of that event and that unveiling of that marker. That marker meant a lot to. It means a lot to America. It means a lot to the people in terms of telling the truth and standing in that space and really, really conveying that and giving the life to that was an honor. I must say, indeed.
And if I can just jump in quickly, let's not forget a great deal of what fueled and the glue that reformulate ATR, Aboriginal African practices and traditions in the New World was revolution. We were motivated by freedom, liberty, revolution. So we ask you to come out and practice with us, participate with us as we, fight the powers that be, as we fight those ties that bind us to that which is unhealthy, unnecessary, unwarranted, not just within us and within our most immediate communities, but all the way up to the top, all the way up to the governmental levels. There's indeed a witchcraft, a spell that's being cast, a dark magic that's being worked on the minds, bodies, spirits, finances, the last nerve, of all of us on the planet right now, within the reach and touch of this great America. And again, this so-called new world, with all of its, foibles and failings and possible blessings, is the birthing of warriorism, revolutionary grassroots activity. First, igniting the very first successful slave uprising in the New World, but then fueling, progress, development, and reaction here in the Deep South, and then ultimately in America. They enacted great black codes and other laws to prevent our mobility, prevent our gathering, to prevent us from singing, chanting, calling on God, seeking spiritual power that they had already, had receipts were beneficial for us. Anytime we let these folk, drum and beat down the rain and call on the gods, there's always some revolutionary uprising, some revolutionary upheaval. And as Elder Reggie suggested, there's a time and a place for all things. We're at war, people.
Yeah.
Hello. This is the time of revolution. We're in the middle of a revolution right now. Some are even suggesting a pre-civil uprising, a pre-civil war.
I would have to say, like, even I think about Essence Festival this year and just the inactivity of that here in the city of New Orleans. A lot of people want to say political and speak political about it, but I think it's more of an economic. It speaks to the economic means in which the people of color here in the city was like, no, we're not being a part of this. We're not getting anything out of this. Like, how is this coming back into our community? How is this facilitating our necessities that we are in need of in the here and now? And I think that was a reflection of that silent, like, shadow of that, and people just pointing fingers at this and pointing fingers at that. But I think at the crux of all that is really the economic disparities within our communities, where we decided to say, not where it's hitting us all at the same time, and we're like, okay, we're making decisions not to get involved because we just can't, or we just don't see it benefiting us and coming back in return. And I think that within itself is, I feel like that hasn't been spoken of, and not many people have said anything about that, but other than the fact that, it's being ran by, Essence is being ran by an African, an African CEO or whoever is now in charge of Essence now. But I'm just like, the underlying, that's just a distraction. What's happening across the community completely is the fact that people are being impacted from this economic economy that's not here in America, not how it was a year ago or a year and a half
And
ago.
our rights and our constitutional rights are being eroded away and tested.
Right. I wanted to jump in and say, Josh, you're totally right. But on a political level, we see a military state in Washington, D.C. right now. And I believe Divine Prince had lived in the D.C. area, so he can relate to some of those areas being occupied. But also there's a state legislator, last name Collier, in Austin, Texas, being held against her natural will in the state capitol. And these people are trying to force her to sign a document that she's not in agreement with. So that's a violation of her civil rights right now at the moment. So if you're doing this to legislators and lawmakers, just imagine what they can do to us who are not in that field of endeavor. So we have to come as a collective, and collective prayer do work. Even if I have to take a Bible quote, they say, where two or more are gathered in my name, I am there, I am present. So when we come as a collective, just imagine the power we have, even though we're coming in our own way, but we putting that down for the collective whole. And I think that is going to be a powerful movement next on Saturday coming. And I just want to reiterate that because financially, political, and civil, we are being attacked on all fronts.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Totally agree. I see that on a day-to-day basis where I work at. Communities of people on the street that's living on the street. And I'm like, I'm going to work every day and I'm like, okay, you still out here on the street? Like it really is, it's just disheartening and it's sad and it's not, I know it's happening not just here in New Orleans, I know it's happening all over this country. As I have traveled many places, I've actually was in Sundance in South Dakota like 2 weeks ago. Fighting a war up there, helping those spiritual community of the Lakota up there and helping them with their disparities that they're having and they're dealing with on reservations out there and still are. And it was somewhat like it is in New Orleans. It's sad to say it, but it's true. And I'm just like, man, this is unilateral. This is not a happenstance. And I'm like, and it's coming from the top.
Yeah, Josh, I'd like to ask a question. There was a political prisoner. He was released maybe 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. His name eludes me at the moment, but I was wondering, was he able to come to the event you went in South Carolina, not in South Dakota? I can't think of his name. I just want.
I don't know. I'm not sure who you're speaking of, but it was
He was a political prisoner for like 30 years or more. I just can't think of. Oh wow. Okay.
No worries. But there was a lot of people there. There was some really good. There was a mixture of tribal representation there of Aztecs, Mayan, Cree up in the Indians up in central Canada. And they all have the same conversation. I sat around a fire one night when I wanted to go to sleep. Actually, the only night that I had to go to sleep. They wanted to talk to me. And it was their concerns about how we felt about what was going on in our country. And I was just like, we don't like what's happening here. And we don't agree with what's going on. We don't agree with a lot that's happening on our governmental levels. So it's the outside people, our neighbors are also on they are actually on our side and thinking the way we thinking concerning what is happening. So all I'm saying is that when, like what Divine Prince mentioned, like it takes a collective to be able to fight up against a governmental power that's trying to encroach on your rights and trying to encroach on your freedoms. And it takes a collective effort to be able to do that. And that's what those men in 1866 that we did that marker, raised that marker for. They came from fighting a war, and they wanted to continue to represent themselves and not be oppressed, and put their lives on the line. And if it wasn't for that, I mean, my great uncles that I mentioned, they wouldn't even have the opportunity to get things that they was able to accomplish in their life. So I'm like, we have to do this for our next generation and for the future of our people. And it's not about it's not just one people, it's for all people. So
And Josh, just to reiterate what you said, on that day, and that we didn't bring it up, but there was practitioners then in 1866. We know Marie Laveau was still alive at that time, but there was practitioners that also helped prepare for that day with prayer, going to the four corners or junctions or whatever, making offerings and rituals on the behalf of those who did show strength and martyrdom, because a lot of them became martyrs of that day. And right now, not saying that we have to be a modern day martyr, but we have to stand up and say enough is enough. We just have to, and we do it with collective prayer first. And if the push keep pushing, then we just have to look at an alternative way to deal with the matters at hand. But let's do the collective prayer and see how that goes, because there is power in prayer.
Yes, indeed. Everything starts in the spirit world and comes into this three-dimensional space that we have right now. So I agree completely with you. Well, I think we're getting close to the end of the show. Mr. Elder Reggie, if you'd like to close us out. I know Sister Toni ain't here today. But
Thanks, Brother Josh, for the passing of that. I always give praise and thanks to Divine Prince for hosting such a great show, the collective audience, and also tonight for Sister Toni. We keep her in prayer all the time, and she's with us in spirit also. With that, I like to say, lest we forget, the spiritual medicine of voodoo brings healing and relief from the shackles of slavery that bind the master and the slave to the same chain of social division. And the master today seems to be coming from a particular political party, and why they are taking such a hard stance, unbeknownst to me, but they're looking like colonial masters in my eyesight. With that, I say, Ashe, Ashe, Asheo. Good night, everyone. We love you.
Odabo.
Look.
AYIBOBO.
Did you know that in African spirituality, we have 4 main spiritual forces? These are like steps that help us understand our connection to the universe. The first force is about the creator of the universe, who made everything. This is the highest force, where we learn how everything in the world is connected to the creator's wisdom and power. The second highest force is about nature spirits. These are spirits found in trees, rivers, mountains, and other parts of nature. When you learn about this force, you understand how to work with nature to bring balance and blessings into your life. The third force is about the spirits of saintly ancestors. This is where we learn how to honor and connect with those who came before us. These ancestors guide and protect us when we show them respect. The fourth highest and most important force is you, the human being. You are the most powerful connection to all these forces because your spirit can learn, grow, and create. To go deeper into these teachings, you need to become part of the Zari movement, where members are taught these spiritual degrees step by step. If you want to learn and preserve African spirituality and culture, join us. The link is on my bio. Together we can reclaim our heritage. One Africa, one continent, one people.
Native Americans are not Asians. We are indigenous to all of the Americas.
North, Central, South, the Caribbean, and even Greenland. We are not recent arrivals.
We have been here since the immemorial dawn of time, since before borders, before names, before maps.
Native Americans are one of the most geographically widespread human lineages on the planet.
You will find us in the deserts of Sonora and Atacama.
You will find us in the Arctic tundras of Alaska and Nunavut.
You will find us in the rainforests of the Amazon,
pine forests of the Rockies, the valleys of Oaxaca, the plains of Argentina, and the islands of the Caribbean.
Our diversity of environments is matched by the resilience of our DNA.
Native Americans share ancient genetic markers, such as mtDNA haplogroups A, B, C, D, and X.
And Y DNA haplogroups Q and C, passed down unbroken for tens of thousands of years.
Markers are rooted in Ice Age populations who migrated across vast distances and adapted to wildly different terrains.
They formed nations. They prayed, they fought, they dreamed, they died, and they were born again in us.
But they didn't just arrive and vanish. They stayed. They built civilization.
On the contrary, it confirms our humanity, because all humans migrated.
Saying we are from Siberia, or even from older human populations that once crossed the Beringia land bridge, does not efface our indigeneity.
All humans came from somewhere. But it is time and place-rooted history and relationship to the land that defines indigenous identity.
If you argue that Native Americans aren't truly native because ancient ancestors crossed from Siberia, then by that same logic, Europeans aren't native to Europe either.
Then the Aboriginal Australians, who arrived over 50,000 years ago through Southeast Asia, are no longer indigenous.
The so-called European race is a complex fusion of Asian, Middle Eastern, and Eurasian components. So are they immigrants too? Should the Chinese, with ancient migrations through the Yellow River Basin, also return to Central Asia? Every living human being, regardless of the color of their skin or the shape of their skull, descends from ancestors who walked out of Africa.
The Khoisan people, among the most genetically ancient on Earth, did not originate across the entire continent. They emerged from a small southern corner of it. Yet no serious scholar today would argue they're not indigenous to Africa just because their roots began in one part and spread to others.
Migration is not the opposite of indigeneity. It is the essence of human life. People often throw the word indigenous around like it's a fixed marker in time, as if humans sprang from the soil of the lands they inhabit.
Everyone comes from somewhere, they migrated, they evolved from earlier species. But that is the truth of human history, my history, our history.
Every people on this planet comes from migratory ancestors. Even Homo sapiens evolved from earlier humans.
Homo erectus, Homo habilis, who roamed across the African savannas and beyond.
Our ancient cousins Neanderthals, Denisovans, and Homo erectus left Africa long before we did, some over 1 million years ago.
They entered Europe, Asia, and beyond, establishing populations that predated modern humans.
But they are not us. And crucially, none of them ever entered the Americas. There is no fossil evidence, no genetic residue, to suggest that any pre-sapiens hominid ever made it to America.
Before them, apes migrated. Before them, even the earliest mammals moved from place to place in search of survival. Migration is not the enemy of identity. It is the foundation of it. What separates Native Americans is this: we did not just pass through the Americas. We became of the Americas. Our presence here stretches back 15,000 to possibly 30,000 years, according to archaeological evidence.
Even Lucia, Kennewick Man, Naya, Spirit Caveman, all the oldest human remains in the Americas have shown to be Native American in genetics.
In contrast, the first modern humans entered the Americas over 25,000 years ago, likely through coastal or interior routes from Siberia.
And from that moment onward, they became the ancestors of every indigenous people of North, Central, and South America. Genetically, Native Americans carry haplogroups like Q and C in paternal lines, and A, B, C, D, and X in maternal lines.
These are not found in modern Europeans, Black people.
Every ancient genome we've recovered, Kennewick Man from Washington, Naya from Mexico's Yucatan, Lucia from Brazil,
has confirmed this shared ancestry. The science is clear. They were Native American, period. That's a connection of over 15,000 years of genetic history no one else has on this continent, not Europeans, Africans, or modern Asians. We are indigenous not because we never came from anywhere, but because we were first and never left.
I'm aware of the pseudo-historical theories, like the Solutrean hypothesis that claims Ice Age Europeans reached the Americas first.
The Afrocentric myths that Black people were here before Native Americans. These narratives crumble under scrutiny.
No Solutrean genetic markers have ever been found in ancient American remains.
No Black American or African haplogroups predating European slavery have been recovered from any Paleo-American skeleton.
Lucia, once misrepresented as African due to facial features, was genetically indigenous American, just like me.
Her bones may have told one story to 19th century eyes, but her DNA told the truth. Which brings me to those 19th century eyes, anthropologists like Samuel George Morton, James Pritchard, and George Catlin,
who looked at the varied faces of Native Americans and saw only through the lens of racial pseudoscience.
The indigenous peoples of the Americas are phenotypically diverse because humanity is diverse.
They mistook diversity for racial mixing, or worse, for misclassification.
But modern genetics has erased their doubts and their false equivalencies. It has shown that despite vast variation in skin tone,
facial structure, and morphology, all Native Americans descend from a common ancestral population.
That unity is written into our blood.
even if our faces are written in many styles.
So if you are a Yupik in Alaska,
or an Inuit across the Arctic, in Greenland, Canada, and Alaska,
or a Blackfoot Indian in Montana,
even a Shavante Indian in the Amazon,
a Navajo in Arizona or New Mexico,
or any indigenous tribe or nation across the Americas, we are all indigenous and descend from the same branch of humanity,